Hi there viewers, and welcome to this week's Planet Watch or Earth Watch reading using the Psi cards that we've been following now. Today is Friday the 13th of April and this reading will take us through to the 19th of April. Now just going back over the reading that I did last, which isn't in fact last week's reading. Unfortunately I've been a bit busy and haven't been able to post an interim reading for last week. So we go back to the previous reading I did, which we noted had repeating patterns that I had picked up. We had the Fool card, which I suggested would be something falling, and we had the Tower card, and we had a Tree card, and we had the Beast. So the repeating patterns around the globe just seem to be coming more and more frequently, and I tend to relate that quite a lot to the zero time wave chart that was devised by Terence McKenna. It did show that 2012 would be a very rapidly repeating year from 2011 with similar occurrences happening but in a shorter time frame, almost as if time has a feeling of compression to it. At the beginning of that reading, Fiji was going through particularly bad flooding issues. That was harrowing for them. There were 13,000 people in remedial housing, and the whole of their main island was practically flooded, and their villages were ruined. Their airport was closed, so tourism was shut down for them. They had a terrible time. And in New Zealand, we had a similar repeating pattern in our Hawke's Bay with severe, really dangerous flooding as well, which had also only just previously occurred in January. Now regards the Fool card, we had many planes that week, oddly, coming to the ground, crashing, falling out of the sky. There was a Russian passenger plane, an ATR-72 with 43 people on board, that just crash landed, and sadly I think 12 people at that time were notified as having died. In Darwin, a pilot had to make an emergency landing because there was a snake on the plane crawling around his ankles, chasing a cane toad or something. We had a meteorite over New Zealand that fell out of the sky. That was a quick sudden event. A small aircraft in New Zealand sadly went with two pilots who were reasonably experienced, and unfortunately they lost their lives in that accident. A fighter jet crashed into an apartment block in New Jersey in America, I believe. That was quite bizarre. And an older lady, apparently she was 80 years old, she had to land their two-seater plane when her husband suddenly had a heart attack and died when he was flying the plane. So that was a week of really strange plane accidents. Regards the animal card that I picked up, and the fact that I felt there might be some activity in the southern hemisphere, there were 615 dead dolphins found off in the coast of Peru, which seemed to match the animal trauma and the southern hemisphere card. So going to the week that's just gone, wow, my goodness, hasn't that been an active week earth-wise? I wasn't sure why I didn't do a reading. Perhaps it was because I may have had a little bit of difficulty trying to analyse the cards, but I've just done retrospectively a quick card draw for them, and the cards that came out were Inquirer, Union, Now, Peace and the Fool. And the Inquirer card indicates something local or localised within what I call the area close to New Zealand, so that could relate around Australia, up through the islands, and of course Fiji was still going through the issue with their flooding. We have had a quake here in Christchurch yesterday. Also the Union card I felt recognised flooding or avalanches, mudslides, something along those, where two smaller entities come together to form one big mass flowing form. I think there have been a couple of avalanches this week too. I'd have to look into that more. The Now card, which I relate to sunspot activity, well, I think a lot of these earthquakes at the moment, they are talking about the worst, lots of solar activity that had actually headed towards Earth right on the day that those earthquakes did occur, so maybe that matched with that. The Fool card that came out, I think we were sticking with falling objects. We can be out of the sky, it can be off cliffs or things falling over. I think there have still been a few air accidents this week again. Now the peace card that came out at the end of that small reading that I did just tentatively for this week, actually I'm going to take as meaning spiritual consciousness activation. And interestingly enough, that did peak for the time zero wave chart for this week. And it would appear that there has been a great wave of mass consciousness activation. And it often happens in times of mass panic. People kind of re-look at life and how they value their belief systems and things that are going on around them. So anyhow, very quickly, just moving on to this week's reading, the first card that came out, as you can see in front of you, is the Warrior. Now, we take the Warrior, he is warlike energies, so there's some sort of argy-bargy energy around him, and if we look further into it, we can see he's in the mountains, and there is water surrounding him, and there's also tents. So I'm thinking, is there something to do with in one of those countries that might be high up, mountainous type countries where there could be water activation ongoing, and these tents, could it be that has to be where people end up being dehoused out of their own normal living situations? I'm trying to not think of it so much as the man is the warrior, but I know there's a lot of very agitated activities on the planet at the moment when we think about North Korea having just launched its rocket. I believe it's launched its rocket as of today, and they're claiming that is it actually just has a satellite on board that's got lots of music dedicated to their original founder of North Korea, whom they all still revere very deeply. So I'm sitting on that one. These readings are meant to be about the planet as opposed to the people on the planet, so we'll just have to wait and see. Now the next card that came out was the No card. I think I've already told you before my feelings on the No card. I'm reading it as a negative, which means it's like a warning, going, wow, wait, this. The next card that came out was the Father card. Now, interestingly enough, the Father card has an arrow pointing to it, which I mentioned in my introduction that I did post a couple of days ago, that the arrows relate to indicators, or that card is so strongly pointing, and it's pointing up into the skies. And they've got the arrows out as if to say, are they defending themselves? Is there something coming from the skies that's bringing much attention that everybody's watching? So I've got the two warrior-like energies, and I've got the arms out, if you like the swords and the arrows, indicating some form of warrior-type feeling energy coming. And they're definitely, that's a very firm, I'm looking to the sky, and he's even pointing up to the sky. So that is indicative to me of keeping an eye on the sky. The next card that came out was the Scales card. Now, again, this is a card of a tree, and it would appear to be a very fruitful tree. So we could say is that northern hemisphere, and the scales on the tree are a very big part of the card. So they're not quite balanced. To me, they are uneven. There's a tipping point. There's something is not balanced. So we're going to see some out of balance movement. And I also note that there's these 3 apples on the ground. So we're seeing things falling off. Again, more of that. So unbalance on the planet, and to do again with trees. We've got something very strange going on in New Zealand at the moment. In fact, the trees look a little bit like this. They're a green tree, and they have red flowers on them, and they're called pahutakawa trees, and they normally flower at Christmas time, and it appears they're about to start flowering en masse right now. So we'll just keep an eye on that one. But to me that means something not in balance that would normally be. And the last card was the Never card, which again bodes to me a little bit negatively. We've got the No and the negative. I'm thinking this could be quite a strong week of activity, and that's a bird on the card. That's a black bird or perhaps a crow. So I'm wondering, are birds going to be affected around the planet? We've seen mass bird strandings before. Is there an issue to do with birds in some way, shape or form? The last The Stranger card that came out is a little bit of a hard one to work out yet. I see a lot of the archetype cards are coming forth as if they want to get a message out, which can be sort of more of a message about us as humans and the way we live as opposed to the planet. But this Stranger card is also not a particularly pleasant one. And this person here is dressed in very winter garb and actually has a big thick glove on its hand there and hiding in the dark. So I'm thinking something in dark hours that could happen, so in the night time, and possibly in a winterish type setting because that person is dressed in winter clothes. So we're heading into winter in theory down here in the southern hemisphere. And it could have something to do with buildings as well, because the person is completely encompassed in a building. A little bit of a hard one to work out, the Stranger. So there you go, everyone. That's a long reading for this week, just because I didn't do one last week and I went over those cards for you all, and there was a huge amount to talk about from the reading before that seemed to be very poignantly accurate with lots of really strange activity. So for all of you watching, I thank you for that. I'm enjoying doing them. I hope you're enjoying reading them. They seem to have some interesting little bits and pieces that pop up, and I hope you all have a really lovely week. I hope for any of you who celebrated Easter you enjoyed that. Take care, everyone. Have a safe and happy week.